Hello Hambini fans and welcome to another episode of the Engineering Shite and Sarcasm show, fronted by yours truly, everyone's favourite 5-year-old, and starring today, no princess, she has been abducted, but in their place, some corporate bad guys, known as Dribble, who are from a well-known suburb of Beijing called Preston. So a disgruntled, very much disgruntled, Hambini viewer sent this frame in and he had some problems with it. Right, here's the weight. It is 1.7 kilos. That is a fucking brick, boys and girls, and anyone else. Frame is an aluminium RIBBLE. I'm not sure of the exact brand or model name, but it's aluminium. It's got a label in here with half a Union flag. It's 51 centimetres and it's 6061 T6. If you're not familiar with that is, 6061 is the series of aluminium and well, it's basically tube. T6 is the treatment that is applied after it. This is extremely resistant to corrosion. A lot of strength alloys for aluminium are 7000 series, but if you want the corrosion resistance, 6000 is probably a better bet. You can see round here, this has all been welded. Looks like badly, but we'll come to that. Along here, this has been formed. Looks like a bit of a cut and shut here. Whoa, look at that. Cut and shut. Brake mount. That looks to be faced afterwards. Another weld in there. This tube's been formed all the way around and it goes to meet the seat tube there. It's the same kind of deal on the other side. I've got another formed tube. They all have these indentations in there to give you the crank clearance. I think that's probably a bit of a mistake, but there you go, that's just my opinion. And then you go down here. Now, if you have the choice between aluminium and carbon, I'd advise you to go for carbon in this day and age anyway. Up here, we've got the head tube, which is flared, and the seat there, which is a conical seat. That looks like it's been faced. And another conical seat there, which again looks like it's been faced. Whether that's been faced by RIBBLE or another bike shop, don't know. In here, the two water bottle mounts, they are actually looking quite clean, and as are these two. Chap said he had creaking from day one, and it had been back to RIBBLE for them to fix it, and all they did was put a load of grease inside the bottom bracket. It was a bit more to-ing and fro-ing. There was COVID, and then the bike ran out of warranty. He then took the bike to another bike shop, I think it's in Accrington actually, and Blood, Sweat and Gears probably, and they did a little bit of checks, and I mean, I'll show you the video in a minute, but what he basically said, the mechanic there, he flexed this chainstay and seat stay and then recreated the creak. Now listening to it, it sounds like a crack, but there's nothing visible, and the normal place you would look for a crack is around any joints. Now typically when you get a crack, it's a sign of movement between objects, or a creak, it's a sign of movement between objects. In this case, the guy was flexing round here and I couldn't see any damage. So I tried to recreate the fault, and that's what we're going to do now. So press down a couple of times and you can quite clearly hear it. So it's in this area here. There's nothing visible around here. Now initially you would go to there or there to check the welds out, but if you look very carefully, and I mean you really have to get the magnifying glass, there is actually a crack where it says the R of RIBBLE. So that crack is right there. So it's almost a radial crack. Now, the reason it's there is probably because as this tube has been formed, it starts to flare right there, and I suspect that is tooling damage rather than impact damage. It doesn't look like impact damage because there's nothing else around it. Those kind of cracks are very difficult to repair because the wall thickness of the aluminium around there tends to be thin. So if you go and blob it, you create a heat affected zone either side of it, and also it will tend to distort. Now this bike, the other thing I noticed was this and this, the alignment is quite poor. Once you put the wheel in there, it'll probably correct itself to a degree, but just the unstressed alignment is fucking garbage. So that's at a bit of an angle. Well, it's a considerable angle compared to the other side. And now comes the best bit. So the owner of the frame sent it in and he basically wanted RIBBLE to get the fuck reamed out of them. And because the frame's basically worthless, he said, feel free to chop it up. So that is what we're going to do.
Oh, fuck, look at my hair. Never mind.
This is the head tube, this is the cutaway from the down tube, this is the top tube. I mean, in there, the mitering is really quite good compared to the Bowman that we've had on before. This is the bottom bracket junction, so we've got one stay, seat stay, sorry, chain stay, another chain stay, bottom bracket aperture, seat tube and down tube. In there, I mean, this is welded and there's a distinct lack of penetration in there. I mean, it's fuck all. It's absolutely ridiculous. The mitering is actually very good. But again, in there, penetration or lack thereof, garbage. This is the non-drive side chainstay. Where the bulge is, there's a draw line in there. So the tool they've used is had some dirt, crap, or even possibly damage to put that in. These things are the cable or hydraulic line mount. So you put a cable tie through there. They look like they've been brazed on and they've not been welded. So that's the other one. They're actually quite good, very neat. This is the cut and shut rear dropout, non-drive side. There's a blowhole there, it's become much more apparent now, and another one where it's exited there. Overall, apart from, well, obviously we've seen the crack, the welding on the bike around here is like a mediocre. It's not really going to pass you a apprenticeship or anything like that, but it's not as bad as the Bowman that we've seen. Some of the other bits, they're brazed on. There's not really much there. It's not going to win any awards, but it's by no means the worst. And you're probably getting what you're paying for if you forget about the crack. And it is that time of the show again, or is it that time of the month again? Time for me to get all hormonal and let the estrogen get to my head. No, it isn't actually that time of the month again. It is time for PowerPoint. In today's PowerPoint, first of all, we need to check that pen is working. The pen is working. Yes, I can definitely say the penetration of the pen is satisfactory, especially after the recent repairs at MSM Urology in Brighton. I will leave you to contemplate that sophisticated level of humour for that one. Right, anyway, we digress. RIBBLE, a calamity, and that is me being kind. By Hambini, aged 5. Remember to hit me up on all those socials and especially on Patreon where you get all the stuff up front and there's some data on there which you can't get in other places, and also you get a discount. For example, quite often I run a 10% off discount, which is well worth having. God, I really need to get out more. Right, the frame is a RIBBLE CGR. There is a sticker on it that says built and tuned in Lancashire, and that is named after the river Ribble. Now, I think it was actually made in the Far East, but we'll come to that. Now, this is an extremely popular bike, especially in the UK, because it was just priced below the right to work threshold, which was like a government scheme to subsidise village bikes for the masses. In fact, I read an interesting article somewhere where they said the average cost of a village bike had dropped ever since the scheme had come out. I'll leave you with that. Now, RIBBLE used to sponsor the RIBBLE Dribble Craptite cycling team, but they folded at the start of this year, and they are probably most famous outside of the UK for being the team of Cameron Jeffers, who was famously removed of his Zwift title for having the brains to go and get the best bike available. What can I say to that? And Katie Kookaburra rides a RIBBLE, and the last time I saw her she was all over the newspaper because she almost got mowed down for riding her bike in a cycle lane. It looked to be one-handed, holding a camera, while a stagecoach bus, that might be wrong, might be a different brand of bus, almost mowed her over. Right, so this is the Dribble website, and this is the page of I think it's the bike in particular, a CGR aluminium AL, I guess, Shimano 105, so you can pick it up, and it's priced at 1,699 quid, and you get all of this. And to be honest, I think the price has gone up quite considerably in the past. Wheel sets, tyres, all that kind of stuff, the seat, 1,700 quid, so you get a bike. And this is the important thing, which was the available on the Cycle to Work scheme. Now, RIBBLE is a trading name of CYCLESPORT North Limited, and this is what I got from Companies House. So if you are not familiar with the UK, if you're a limited company or like a publicly traded company, then you have to publish your accounts to Companies House. So it's almost it is a government institution. So you can see from this, their accounts were overdue. So their finance director may be in a spot of bother, but anyway, there we go. Now, in the account, I plucked out this, which is their turnover. So their turnover, and this is the last ones that I had at the time of making this video, for 2019 was almost 10 million quid. In the year of COVID, it basically doubled, and it was 18 million quid. They are not a small company by any means. And you can see where the turnover is mainly generated. So a fair amount of turnover, well, most of the turnover is in Europe. And surprisingly, and also the Americas has doubled. But surprisingly, the turnover from Australia had gone down. Australia and New Zealand had gone down considerably. This is the history from the disgruntled punter. So this is what he sent me. He basically bought the bike in 2019. And then he rang up RIBBLE, emailed RIBBLE, and you can read all that a bit further. But he basically said he took the bike back twice. Now I come on to the technical bits. This is the crack. Now I've tried to take a picture of it as best I can, but the key thing to take away from this is, the chain stay is running along there basically, and this crack is almost parallel to it, and it's a bit of a, I don't know, how could you say it's almost parallel. It's at 90 degrees to the tube. It suggests it's in line with that, and we'll come on to why in a minute, but that's just a zoom in of the crack. Now, we'll start off with the pen jokes. The welding on this isn't great, but it isn't the Bowman. The Bowman really was not good at all. This is it a contributing factor to the failure? I don't know. We'll go through that in a second, but I mean, well, you'll see the cutaway in a minute. Normally, when you get an aluminium frame, you tend to have this setup, which is the bottom bracket, and you've got the down tube here, chain stay here, and then the seat tube here. There's clear air between all of them, and then you'd weld all the way around there, weld round there, weld round there. So there's no overlap. In the case of this RIBBLE bike, you've got some tube overlap and a gaping hole at the bottom. So this is after I chopped it up, but you can see the hole here. That's where the cables come out. So the cables come out round here and then go around. Yeah. But you've got tube overlap. So the weld, there's no weld of that tube inside. So you've just got fillets all the way around, and the fillet stops there. That's filleted round there, fillet round there. But in here, you've got nothing, and that's a fairly highly loaded component. Now this is the original picture on the top right here. What I've done is I've made it into black and white and done the contrast and all that. You can see there's an incomplete penetration all the way to the root, and here this is the weld bead around here. I've actually drawn that a bit generously for Ribble, but the actual limit of the metal is probably there, so that's the limit of the BB. You've got 3/10 of fuck all depth of fusion into the BB, so it's a low temperature weld. Now, depending on which welding engineer you go to, they'll say, oh, that's okay, or that's not okay. In my opinion, and various other people's opinion, in fact, there's a few people on the fence, if you do the low temperature welds, it suggests that they've gone and bought the BB part as one, done the low temperature welds to avoid distortion. A better way, or a stronger way, would be to do the full pen weld, well, deep pen welds, and then machine it afterwards. You do risk distortion, but if you do it, well, you can get around that, and also some stress relief if required. This is where there's like a brace behind the two seat stays, and you see it's blowing through, not blowing through, it's come around the other side, which is a lot more heat, and it's also much thinner metal. Yeah, so that's why that's come through. It's just a cost saving measure. Is it a contributory factor? Well, we'll come to that. This is a full pen weld on a butt weld. So a butt weld, and it's out of Specialized, butt weld is when you get two bits of metal and join it like that, and the weld goes in like that. So that's your weld filler material. And that's all the way through. A fillet weld is when two bits of metal, almost like that, and you weld in there. You will get the depth of fusion is how much you go into there. So if you have a big depth of fusion, it's like that. Okay, that's proof of crap drawing anyway. Now this is a contributing factor. The rear non-drive side seat stay is badly misaligned. So there's a shot of it on the left hand side around here, and you can also see, if you look carefully, this is the drive side seat stay, and I've just put a red line in there to show you that I've tried to line the bottom bracket up as horizontally as possible. This sits higher than this. Yeah, but the ultimate position, which is where the through axle goes through, is the same. So what they've done is they've offsetted that bit, or the whole of that bit, to compensate. So that would have been known when the guy welded it. Some people said, is this robotically welded? I don't think so. I mean, there's a pinhole there, blowhole there. Anyway, so this is the two orange lines to show you the misalignment. And this is a bike that I found on the internet. It's another Ribble bike. It's not quite the same, it's slightly different. And this is a zoom in of the shot. So this is the rear stay, and you can see that one there. And then when I put this out, one of my viewers also contacted me with a I think it's the same bike. It looks like the same kind of paint. I mean, you can see that there. That's the viewer who sent me in. Thank you very much for that. And you can see a matching one here. And you can also see just here, look like that bit versus that bit. So this one here, the top one, is much better aligned. And then I went a bit further, and then when I did the chop up, the first thing I noticed was the thing pinged. But you can see that here, that bit there, and then all of this weld around here. So they've just filled it basically. Yeah, and here's another shot of it. So that bit's filled, that bit has got nothing in it until you get to the end where the weld, about here where the weld exists. So it's sitting low. Here's a better shot of it. So you can see the clear air around there. And again, I've just put the pen the guide there to show the misalignment. Right, I actually contacted RIBBLE and they saw the first part of this PowerPoint. So the bit, well, they saw everything apart from the PowerPoint, so apart from the actual deep diagnosis. Now, they were actually very receptive. Initially, when I used the custom chat facility, the guy at the other end said, you know, what's your order number? And I pointed out, look, this, you're about to get reamed, sort it out. And then he put me in touch, or in fact, the head of technical joined the chat conversation, and I said, look, I'm going to put this out, have a look at it. In that period between when I put it out and I said, you know, you give me a response within 24 hours, and they did so, you know, absolutely to the T. So the punter and RIBBLE are now in contact. Now, RIBBLE, if you are watching, you're invited to comment on this video, and I will pin it for everyone to look at. Now, overall, the likely cause of this is misalignment. Well, it's almost like a slam dunk. Is misalignment in that non-drive side. RIBBLE have actually been fairly fortunate, because let's say if the guy had an accident and he ended up in hospital, or worst case still, he died. Now, we've got a few failings on here which I've sort of highlighted below. In a criminal prosecution, it is, you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. In a civil prosecution or civil case, it is on the balance of probabilities. Now, on the balance of probabilities of proving, you know, the bike had a fault from day one, and you know, all the contributory factors, I think it will be a slam dunk. RIBBLE will be completely screwed. They'd have to pay up. And that is because of, you know, multiple things. So the guy who's welded it would have seen that it was misaligned. The guy that QA/QC'd it as it left the factory, I don't believe it was made by RIBBLE. I think it was made by someone in the Far East. Another point there where it would have been checked. Then when RIBBLE receipted it, they should have checked. Whether they did or not is another matter, and you know, people will go on to that. Then when the guy built it up, again, another check. And then, and this is the bit where the negligence bit really gets in, RIBBLE have had, according to the customer, the punter, 2 goes at fixing it. Now, the noise was there and has been reported, and that is really the symptom. And they've diagnosed it as the bottom bracket. Well, we know that's not the case. And then they've had a go at it. Now, in order for, you know, corporate manslaughter, they would have to, or the prosecution would have to prove that they were negligent, and there's actually 6 tests for it. On 3 of those, I think their actions would be very difficult for RIBBLE to defend. And that's where we are. So overall, this is not really a very good it's seriously not a good advert for all the QA, QCs and stuff like that. And then you've got to the stage now where some serious question marks are being asked there. First of all, there's the bike, and then secondary service afterwards didn't pick it up. So it's been sent here. I've sliced it up. It's pretty damning what was found. And I think any sort of crash investigator would think the same thing. So just a bit of background, I used to be an air crash investigator for a short period on my graduate rotation many moons ago when I was a young engineer. So I've seen these kind of things before. Now, that is it. If you did enjoy that presentation or that YouTube video, please remember to smash that like button. It does help the channel. And also hit subscribe. And as always, keep banging your hairdresser.